Taman sat on a metal crate in the cargo bay, alone with his thoughts. The hum of the station's air systems filled the silence around him. He had finished loading the last shipment an hour ago, and now he had time to himself. His hands moved, automatically, as he pulled out his knife and a cleaning cloth. The knife was old. The handle was worn smooth from years of use, and the blade had small scratches along its surface. But Taman kept it sharp. He always did. It was a habit he couldn't break, even after 3 years of working on civilian ships. He wiped the blade slowly, watching the metal shine under the cargo bay lights. As he cleaned, he noticed the small symbols etched into the steel. They ran along both sides of the blade, each one different from the others. Taman had carved them himself years ago, in a life that felt like it belonged to someone else. The cargo bay door hissed open. Taman didn't look up immediately. He assumed it was one of his crewmates coming to check on something. But then he heard a strange clicking sound, like hard shells tapping together. He raised his head and saw an alien standing in the doorway. The creature was tall and thin, with a body covered in smooth, dark plates. Its head was triangular, with large compound eyes that reflected the light like jewels. 2 mandibles clicked together near its mouth. It was a Valari, one of the insect-like species that worked as inspectors on the station. The Valari took a step inside, carrying a data pad in its thin, multi-jointed fingers. It seemed focused on its work, probably here to verify the cargo manifests. Taman had seen inspectors like this before. They were thorough, but usually quick. "Good afternoon," Taman said, setting down his cleaning cloth but keeping the knife in his hand. The Valari's head turned toward him. Its compound eyes fixed on Taman's face, then dropped to his hands, specifically to the knife. The alien froze. Taman noticed the change immediately. The Valari's mandibles stopped clicking. Its entire body went rigid like a statue. The data pad slipped slightly in its grip. "Are you all right?" Taman asked, concerned. He had never seen an alien react this way before. The Valari didn't answer. Its eyes remained locked on the knife. Slowly, very slowly, it took a step backward, then another. Its breathing changed, becoming faster and more shallow. Taman looked down at his knife, confused. It was just an old combat blade, nothing special. He had carried it for years. What could possibly be wrong? "Inspector?" Taman said, standing up. "Is there a problem?" The Valari's mandibles opened and closed rapidly. When it finally spoke, its voice was high and trembling. "Where did you get that blade?" Taman glanced at the knife again. "This? It's just my old service knife. I've had it since my military days." The Valari made a sound that Taman couldn't identify. It was something between a hiss and a whistle. The alien's eyes never left the blade. "The emblems," the Valari said, its voice barely above a whisper. "Those markings, where did they come from?" Taman turned the knife over in his hand, looking at the symbols he had carved so long ago. "I made them myself. Each one represents someone from my unit." "Why? What's wrong?" The Valari didn't answer. Instead, it raised one hand to the communicator attached to its chest. It spoke rapidly in its own language, a series of clicks and whistles that Taman couldn't understand. But he could hear the panic in the alien's voice. Within seconds, other Valari appeared at the cargo bay entrance. Then more aliens of different species arrived. They all stopped when they saw Taman standing there with his knife. The reaction was instant and universal. Fear. Every alien in the doorway looked at him with wide eyes or dilated pupils or whatever their species used to show terror. Some took steps backward, others reached for weapons but didn't draw them. Taman felt his heart rate increase. He hadn't done anything wrong, but suddenly he was surrounded by frightened aliens acting like he was dangerous. His training kicked in automatically. He assessed exits, counted potential threats, and calculated his chances if this situation went bad. But he forced himself to stay calm. He held the knife loosely, making sure it didn't look like a threat. "I don't understand what's happening," he said clearly. "Can someone please explain?" A larger alien pushed through the crowd. It was a Sauron, one of the reptilian species that often worked in station security. This one wore a commander's insignia on its uniform. Its scales were deep green, and its yellow eyes studied Tai Min with intense focus. "Human," the Sauron said in a deep, gravelly voice. "I am Commander Veltis. I need you to remain calm and cooperative." "I am calm," Tai Min replied. "But I'd appreciate knowing why everyone is acting like I'm about to attack them." Veltis looked at the knife in Tai Min's hand. The commander's eyes narrowed. "May I see that blade? I promise it will be returned to you." Tai Min hesitated. The knife was important to him, but he was outnumbered, and these aliens clearly thought something was seriously wrong. Starting a fight wouldn't help anyone. "All right," he said, flipping the knife around so he held it by the blade. He extended the handle toward Veltis. "But I want it back. It's important to me." Veltis took the knife carefully, as if it might explode. The commander held it up to the light, examining the emblems closely. The other aliens watched in silence. After a long moment, Veltis looked up at Tai Min. "Human, do you know what these symbols mean?" "They're unit markers," Tai Min said. "Each one represents a soldier I served with. Friends who didn't make it home. I carved them so I wouldn't forget." Veltis's expression changed. The fear was still there, but now it was mixed with something else. Respect, awe. Tai Min couldn't tell. "These symbols," Veltis said slowly, "are not just unit markers. They are marks of the ghosts, the warriors who fought in the War of the Burning Suns over 400 years ago." Tai Min blinked. "I don't understand. That was centuries before humans even left Earth." "No," Veltis said, her voice firm. "It was not. Humans were there. They fought. They won. And then they disappeared, and the galaxy thought they were extinct or perhaps never existed at all. But here you stand, carrying the marks of the most feared warriors in galactic history." The cargo bay fell completely silent. Every eye was on Tai Min. He felt his stomach drop. The War of the Burning Suns. He had heard of it in classified briefings during his service. Earth's first major involvement in galactic affairs. The records were sealed. Most humans didn't even know it had happened. But somehow these aliens remembered, and they were terrified. "I think," Tai Min said quietly, "we need to have a longer conversation about this." Veltis nodded slowly. Yes we do. Please come with me." "And human?" The commander paused. "You are not under arrest, but I strongly suggest you stay where we can protect you." "Protect me?" Tai Min asked. "From what?" Veltis handed the knife back to him carefully. "From those who will want you dead once they learn what you are." Tai Min took the knife and slid it back into its sheath. His quiet life as a cargo worker had just ended, and he had a feeling things were about to get much more complicated. Commander Veltis led Tai Min through the station's corridors. The other aliens kept their distance, but Tai Min could feel their eyes on him. Word was spreading fast. Everywhere he looked, beings stopped what they were doing to stare at him. They entered a private office near the command center. The room was simple, with a desk, some chairs, and a large screen on the wall. Veltis gestured for Tai Min to sit, then closed the door behind them. "Before we begin," Veltis said, sitting down across from him, "I want you to understand something. I am not your enemy. Neither are most of the beings on this station. But what you carry changes everything." Tai Min pulled out his knife and set it on the desk between them. "Then help me understand. You said this is connected to some ancient war, but humans weren't even in space 400 years ago. Our first colony ships left Earth barely a century and a half ago." Veltis touched a control panel, and the wall screen lit up. Images appeared, ancient battlefields, destroyed ships floating in space, planets scarred by weapons, and symbols. Everywhere, carved into metal and stone, were marks identical to those on Tai Min's knife. "The War of the Burning Suns," Veltis began, "was the darkest period in modern galactic history. The Kresh Dominion had conquered 47 star systems. They enslaved entire species. Those who resisted were eliminated. For 60 years, they expanded without anyone strong enough to stop them. The screen showed images of the Kresh. They were massive creatures, covered in thick armor-like skin. Their faces were brutal, with heavy jaws and small, cruel eyes. They looked like they were built for war. Then, Veltis continued, something changed. Warriors appeared. No one knew where they came from. They had no home system, no diplomatic contact, no demands. They simply fought, and they were terrifyingly effective. New images appeared. Burned Kresh warships, fortresses with holes blown through their walls, bodies of Kresh soldiers, all killed with precise strikes. We called them ghosts because they struck without warning and vanished before reinforcements could arrive. They never took credit for their victories. They never asked for payment or territory. They just fought the Kresh wherever they found them. Timon leaned forward, studying the images. Something about the tactics looked familiar, the way the attacks were coordinated. The precision of the strikes. It reminded him of his own training. The war turned, Veltis said. With the ghosts helping, species that had been enslaved began to fight back. The Kresh started losing ground. It took 20 years, but eventually the Dominion collapsed. The ghosts were the key to our freedom. And then, Timon asked. And then they disappeared. Completely. They took their dead with them, destroyed their equipment, and left no trace of who they were or where they had gone. All we had left were the marks they carved at battle sites. Marks exactly like the ones on your blade. The screen showed close-ups of the symbols. They matched perfectly. Each design, each style of engraving was identical to what Timon had carved himself. Galactic historians have studied these marks for centuries, Veltis explained. They represent units, squads, and fallen warriors. Every ghost carried a blade with these marks. It was part of their culture, their way of honoring their dead. Timon picked up his knife and looked at it with new understanding. He had learned to carve these marks during his training in Earth's Special Reconnaissance Division. Every soldier in his unit did the same. It was tradition, but no one had ever told him why they did it or where the tradition came from. So you're saying humans were the ghosts? Timon said quietly. Yes. And if you serve in a military unit that still follows these traditions, it means your species never stopped training warriors in the old ways. That is what frightens people. Timon understood now. The galaxy thought humans were peaceful traders and explorers. They didn't know that Earth still maintained military forces trained in the same methods that had defeated the Kresh centuries ago. How many humans know about this? Veltis asked. Most don't, Timon admitted. The war is classified. I only know because I served in special operations. We were told our training came from old Earth military traditions, but nothing about fighting in a galactic war. Veltis nodded slowly. Your government has kept this secret well. Perhaps they wanted to start fresh, to be known for something other than war. I can respect that. The door suddenly opened. A crew member from the Cheonsa rushed in. It was Ha-Jin, the ship's captain. She was a woman in her 40s with short hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. Right now those eyes were filled with anger. What is going on? Ha-Jin demanded. I just heard that station security took one of my crew members. Timon, are you all right? I'm fine, Captain, Timon said. But we have a situation. Ha-Jin looked at the knife on the desk. Her eyes went wide. Then her expression hardened. She turned to Veltis. Commander, I need to speak with my crew member privately. Captain Ha-Jin, I don't think... Now, Commander. Veltis studied Ha-Jin for a moment, then stood. 5 minutes. Then we need to discuss security measures. The Sauron left the room, closing the door behind her. As soon as they were alone, Ha-Jin turned to Timon. You idiot! Why were you cleaning your knife in public? Timon blinked in surprise. You know about this? Ha-Jin reached under her jacket and pulled out her own knife. It was similar to Timon's with different symbols carved along the blade. Of course I know. I served in the same division you did, just different unit. Why do you think I took this cargo route? It's quiet, away from major stations, and no one asks questions. The commander says the aliens remember the war, Timon said. They know what these marks mean. I heard. The whole station is talking about it. Timon, this is bad. If word spreads that humans are the ghosts from their legends, it could cause panic. Or worse. Worse how? Ha-Jin's expression grew grim. The Kresh Dominion collapsed, but the Kresh species didn't die out. There are still Kresh worlds out there, and they remember who defeated them. If they learn that humans are still around and still trained as warriors, they might see it as a chance for revenge. Before Timon could respond, alarms blared throughout the station. Red lights flashed. Veltis's voice came over the intercom. Security alert. All personnel to defensive positions. We have unauthorized armed individuals entering Docking Bay 7. Species identified as Kresh. Hajin and Taemin locked eyes. They both understood immediately. They're already here, Hajin said. How? Taemin grabbed his knife. How did they find out so fast? Does it matter? We need to move. They ran out of the office. The corridors were filled with panicking civilians. Station security forces were trying to establish a perimeter, but they looked nervous. The Sauron guards held their weapons ready but didn't look confident. Veltis appeared, running toward them. You two need to get to a secure location. The Kresh are here for you. How many? Hajin asked, her voice calm and professional. 4, all armed, all trained warriors. Veltis looked at them both. They sent a message. They said they're here to kill the ghost and restore their honor. Taemin felt something cold settle in his stomach. He had hoped his fighting days were over. He had wanted a quiet life, but that life was gone now. Commander, Hajin said, where are they now? Moving through the commercial district. They're coming this way. We're evacuating civilians, but your people don't know how to fight Kresh warriors, Taemin finished. Veltis hesitated, then nodded. Our security forces are trained for normal threats, pirates, smugglers, not military-grade Kresh. Hajin looked at Taemin. He could see the question in her eyes. They had both left that life behind. They had both wanted peace. But people were in danger now. Innocent people who couldn't defend themselves. Taemin sighed and tested the weight of his knife in his hand. The old reflexes were coming back, whether he wanted them to or not. All right, he said quietly. Tell your people to pull back and protect the civilians. Captain Hajin and I will handle the Kresh. Veltis stared at them. There are 4 of them. Trained killers. You're just 2 cargo workers with knives. Hajin smiled, but there was no humor in it. Commander, we're not cargo workers. We're ghosts, and it's time the galaxy remembered what that means. The commercial district was nearly empty. Smart civilians had fled when they heard the alarms. A few stubborn shop owners were still trying to secure their stores, grabbing valuable items before running for safety. Taemin and Hajin moved through the wide corridor carefully. Their years of training came back naturally like muscle memory. They stayed close to the walls, checking corners, watching for movement. Commander Veltis and her security team followed at a distance, weapons ready, but clearly uncertain. Contact, Hajin whispered. She pointed ahead. 3 Kresh warriors stood in the center of the corridor about 50 meters away. They were massive, each one over 2 meters tall and covered in thick gray armor-like skin. They wore minimal clothing but carried weapons, heavy blades and what looked like energy pistols. The Kresh were searching the shops, kicking open doors and looking inside. They were hunting. Where's the 4th? Taemin asked quietly. Unknown. Probably flanking. One of the Kresh noticed them. It pointed and roared something in its own language. All 3 warriors turned to face Taemin and Hajin. Their small eyes narrowed with hate. The largest Kresh stepped forward. When it spoke, its voice was deep and rough, but its words were in standard galactic common language. You are the ghost, the one with the marked blade. I'm just a cargo worker, Taemin said calmly. You should leave this station before more security arrives, the Kresh laughed. It was an ugly sound like rocks grinding together. Security? Those weak species? They cannot stop us. We are Kresh warriors. Our ancestors ruled the galaxy. And then they lost, Hajin said coldly. Lost to humans, lost to us. Maybe you should remember that before you do something stupid. The Kresh's expression twisted with rage. Lies. Our people were not defeated by weak creatures like you. The ghosts were demons, spirits of war, not flesh and blood. Then let me prove you wrong, Taemin said. He pulled out his knife and held it where the Kresh could see the emblems. These marks are real. The warriors who carried them were real, and I'm one of them. The lead Kresh snarled and raised its blade. Then you will die like your ancestors should have died. Attack! The 3 Kresh charged forward. They were fast, faster than Taemin expected for their size. But he had fought aliens before. He knew not to judge by human standards. Split, Hajin ordered. They separated, each moving to opposite sides of the corridor. The Kresh had to choose who to chase. 2 went after Taemin. 1 went for Hajin. Exactly what they wanted. Taemin waited until the Kresh were close, then dropped low and rolled to the side. The first Kresh's blade swung through empty air where his head had been. Before the warrior could recover, Taemin was moving again. He came up behind the Kresh and struck. His knife found the gap between the armor plates at the back of the knee. The blade went deep. The Kresh roared in pain and stumbled. The second crash was already attacking. It swung its heavy weapon in a wide arc. Taemin ducked under it, feeling the wind from the blade pass over his head. He countered with a fast strike to the Kresh's arm, cutting through muscle and causing the warrior to drop its weapon. But the Kresh didn't stop. It grabbed Taemin with its free hand, lifting him off the ground. Its grip was incredibly strong. Taemin felt his ribs creak under the pressure. He didn't panic. Instead, he drove his knife into the Kresh's wrist, right where the nerves clustered. The warrior's hand opened reflexively and Taemin dropped free. On the other side of the corridor, Hajin was handling her opponent with brutal efficiency. She moved like water, flowing around the Kresh's attacks and striking back at vulnerable points. Her knife flashed in the light, leaving cuts on the warrior's arms and legs. The Kresh she fought was getting slower, bleeding from multiple wounds. It was strong and tough, but Hajin was precise. Every strike had a purpose. Taemin heard a sound behind him. Instinct screamed danger. He threw himself to the side just as a fourth Kresh appeared from a side corridor, its blade cutting through the space where he had been standing. The ambush. The one they had been waiting for. This Kresh was different from the others. It wore more armor and moved with more control. A leader. It studied Taemin with cold intelligence, then attacked with practiced skill. Taemin found himself on the defensive. This warrior knew how to fight. Its strikes were calculated and efficient. It wasn't just relying on strength. It had technique. Their blades met with a metallic ring. Taemin deflected a thrust aimed at his chest, then countered with a slash toward the Kresh's face. The warrior blocked and kicked out, forcing Taemin back. They circled each other. The other fights had paused. Everyone was watching this duel. "You fight well for a weak species," the Kresh leader said. "Perhaps the legends are true. Perhaps you are a ghost." "I'm just a man with a knife," Taemin replied. "But that's all I need." They clashed again. This time Taemin didn't try to match the Kresh's strength. Instead, he used speed and angles. When the Kresh struck high, he went low. When it committed to an attack, he moved to the side and countered. His knife found the gaps in the armor. Small cuts, not deep but painful. The Kresh was bleeding now, dark blood dripping onto the corridor floor. "You cannot win," the Kresh leader growled. "More of my people will come. We will hunt down every ghost. We will have our revenge." "Revenge for what?" Taemin demanded, still moving, still fighting. "For losing a war you started. For failing to conquer the galaxy. Your ancestors made their choice. They chose war, and war chose them back." The Kresh roared and charged. It was a desperate move driven by rage instead of strategy. Taemin was ready. He stepped into the charge instead of away from it. The move surprised the Kresh. Taemin ducked under the warrior's arm, got behind it, and drove his knife into the soft spot at the base of the skull. The blade went deep. The Kresh leader fell. Taemin pulled his knife free and looked around. Hajin had finished her opponent. The other two Kresh were on the ground, wounded and no longer fighting. Station security had moved in and was restraining them. It was over. Taemin felt his heart pounding. His hands were shaking slightly from adrenaline. He looked down at his knife, covered in dark Kresh blood, and felt a wave of exhaustion wash over him. "You all right?" Hajin asked, walking over to him. She had a few bruises, but no serious injuries. "Yeah, you?" "I'll live." Commander Veltis approached them slowly. The Sauron was staring at them with wide eyes. Behind her, the other security officers looked equally shocked. "I have never seen anyone fight like that," Veltis said quietly. "You move so fast, so precisely, like you knew exactly what they would do before they did it." "Training," Hajin said simply, "and experience." The entire fight was recorded on security cameras, Veltis continued. "The footage is already being sent to my superiors. By tomorrow, every species in the galaxy will have seen it." Taemin closed his eyes. That was exactly what they didn't need. But there was no helping it now. "Commander, we need to contact Earth's government," Hajin said. "This situation is bigger than just us now. They need to know what's happening." Veltis nodded. "Already done. Ambassador Hyunwoo is on his way. He should arrive within a few hours." The station's intercom crackled to life. A panicked voice came through. "Command, we're receiving multiple distress signals. Mining colony on the frontier. They report a Kresh fleet gathering near their system. They're requesting immediate assistance." Everyone went silent. "How many ships?" Veltis asked into her communicator. "At least 20 capital ships. Maybe more." "Command, this isn't a raiding party. This is an invasion force." Taemin and Hajin looked at each other. The same thought was in both their minds. They're not just after us, Taman said. They're going after everyone. This is revenge on a larger scale. We need to warn Earth, Hajin said. If the Kresh are mobilizing, this could become a full war. Velthus's communicator buzzed again. Commander, we're also receiving reports of Kresh activity in 3 other systems. They're targeting colonies with human populations. Taman felt something cold and heavy settle in his chest. The secret was out. Humanity's past had caught up with them, and now innocent people were going to pay the price. The Kresh want their revenge, he said quietly. They're going to attack anyone associated with humans. Traders, diplomats, colonists, anyone. Then we need to stop them, Hajin said firmly. With what? Taman gestured around. We're 2 people with knives. That fleet has 20 warships. Then we get more people. The Cheonsa has a crew of 7. 3 of them are former military like us. Songho, Jiwoo, and Yunbi. They all served in special operations. Taman stared at her. You're saying our ship is full of former ghost operatives? I'm saying we all wanted the same thing. A quiet life away from war. But that choice is gone now. The galaxy needs ghosts again. And we're the only ones here. Commander Velthus stepped forward. If you're willing to help defend that colony, I will personally provide transport and whatever resources you need. My people owe a debt to the ghosts. Let us repay it. Taman looked at his knife one more time. The emblems carved in the blade seemed to catch the light. Each mark represented a friend who had died in service. He had hoped never to add more names to that blade, but some things were worth fighting for. Some battles couldn't be avoided. All right, he said finally. Let's go save some people. The crew of the Cheonsa gathered in their ship's common area. Taman watched his crewmates carefully as Hajin explained the situation. He had worked with these people for months, never knowing their real backgrounds. Now everything was different. Seungho spoke first. He was a big man with scarred hands and a calm face. He worked as their engineer. So the Kresh know about us now, and they want revenge. Yes, Hajin confirmed. A mining colony is in danger. They have maybe 2 days before the Kresh fleet arrives. We're being asked to help defend it. Jiwoo, their navigator, crossed her arms. She was small and quick, with sharp eyes that constantly scanned everything around her. How many defenders does the colony have? Minimal security force, Taman said. Maybe 20 guards. The colony has about 300 civilians. Mixed species families. Against a Kresh battle fleet. Yunbi, their medic, shook her head. She was a woman in her late 30s with gentle hands but hard eyes. That's not a fight. That's a massacre. Which is why we need to go, Hajin said. We have the skills to teach them how to survive. How to fight back. The Galactic Council has approved the mission. Commander Velthus is providing a fast ship to transport us. Seungho stood up and walked to the window. He stared out at the stars for a long moment. I joined the merchant fleet to get away from fighting. I spent 10 years in special operations. 10 years of missions that never officially happened. I wanted peace. We all did, Jiwoo said quietly. But peace isn't free. Someone always has to stand guard. And right now those colonists have no one else. Yunbi pulled out a small knife from her pocket. It was similar to Taemin's and Hajin's, covered in carved emblems. My blade has 12 marks. 12 people I couldn't save. I became a medic because I was tired of adding names. But if we don't go, hundreds more will die, families, children. Seungho turned around. His expression was hard but determined. Then we go. We teach those colonists how to fight. And we make the Kresh pay for threatening innocent people. Agreed, Jiwoo said. Hajin looked at Taemin. You started this when you cleaned your knife in that cargo bay. You ready to finish it? Taemin thought about running. About taking a shuttle and disappearing into the far edges of space. He had enough money saved. He could change his name, find work on a quiet world and never touch a weapon again. But then he remembered the Kresh leader's words. More would come. They would hunt every ghost, every human. The war wouldn't stop just because he ran from it. I'm ready, he said. Commander Velthus provided them with a fast military transport. It was a Volari design, built for speed rather than comfort. They reached the mining colony in 16 hours. The colony was called Haven's Rest. It sat on a moon rich in rare minerals. The settlement was small, prefabricated buildings arranged in a rough circle around a central landing pad. Defensive walls surrounded the colony, but they looked weak. Built to keep out wildlife, not military forces. The colony administrator met them at the landing pad. He was a Volari named Threnix, middle-aged and clearly terrified. Thank you for coming. We received word that a Kresh fleet is heading this way. Our security chief says we can't fight them. She wants to evacuate. Evacuation might not be possible, Hajin said. If the Kresh surround the system before your transport ships arrive, you'll be trapped. Threnix's mandibles clicked nervously. Then what do? We teach your people to fight, Taemin said. We turn this colony into a fortress, and we make the Kresh think twice about attacking. Over the next day and a half, Taemin and his team worked constantly. They trained the colonists in basic combat. How to hold weapons, how to take cover, how to work together. Most of the colonists had never fought before. They were miners and engineers and families. But fear was a powerful teacher, and they learned fast. Yunbi worked with the civilians, teaching them emergency medical care, how to treat wounds, how to stabilize injured people until proper help arrived. She was patient and calm, even when her students made mistakes. Zhongho focused on fortifying the colony. He showed the miners how to build barriers using mining equipment, how to create choke points that would force attackers into kill zones. His engineering background made him perfect for turning a simple mining colony into a defensive position. Ji Wu trained people in reconnaissance and communication. She set up observation posts around the colony and taught volunteers how to spot approaching enemies, how to report accurately without panicking. Hajin and Taemin handled combat training. They taught knife fighting, close quarters combat, and basic tactics. The colonists were clumsy at first, but they improved. On the second night, Taemin sat alone near the defensive wall, cleaning his knife. It had become his meditation, a way to calm his mind before a fight. Threnix approached and sat down nearby. The Valari watched Taemin work for a moment. Those marks on your blade. Commander Veltus told me what they mean. Each one is a fallen friend. Yes, Taemin said quietly. My grandfather told me stories, Threnix said, about the warriors who freed our people from the Kresh, the silver-bladed saviors, he called them. I thought they were just legends. Stories to give us hope. They were real people, soldiers who fought because someone had to. Are you afraid? Threnix asked. The Kresh fleet will be here tomorrow. 20 warships against one small colony. Taemin considered the question. Yes, I'm afraid. Fear keeps you alert, keeps you alive. But fear doesn't control me. How do you do it? How do you face death and keep fighting? Taemin held up his knife so the emblems caught the moonlight. Every person marked on this blade was afraid too. But they fought anyway. Not because they were fearless, but because there were people depending on them. People who couldn't fight for themselves. Like us, Threnix said, like you. And that's why we'll win tomorrow. Not because we're stronger than the Kresh, but because we're protecting something worth dying for. Threnix stood up. My grandfather would have been proud to meet you. The Valari walked away, leaving Taemin alone with his thoughts. The next morning, the Kresh arrived. Their fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the system. 20 massive warships dark and threatening against the stars. They didn't immediately attack. Instead, they sent a message. The colony's communication system crackled to life. A Kresh voice, deep and filled with hate, spoke in Galactic Common. Humans, we know you are there. Surrender yourselves and we will spare the colony. Refuse and everyone dies. Hajin stood in the colony's command center, surrounded by frightened civilians. She looked at Taemin, then at the communication panel. Give me the transmitter, she said. Threnix handed her the device with shaking hands. Hajin pressed the button and spoke clearly, her voice steady and strong. This is Captain Hajin of Earth. I speak for the humans here and for everyone in this colony. We will not surrender. If you want us, come and take us. There was silence from the Kresh fleet. Then suddenly laughter, cruel and mocking. You are brave but foolish, the Kresh commander said. We will crush your colony. We will kill every human, and then we will hunt down the rest of your species across the galaxy. The age of the ghosts is over. Hajin smiled, though there was no humor in it. She switched to an older language, one that Taemin recognized from classified training. Ancient Kresh war tongue, the language their empire had used centuries ago. When she spoke, her words were clear and deliberate. Malin Labe, come and take them. The transmission cut off. In the command center, everyone stared at Hajin. What did you just say? Threnix asked. Something the original ghosts used to say to the Kresh, Hajin explained. Right before they won, Taemin felt a chill run down his spine. He had heard those words before in training. They were legendary. the battle cry that had turned the tide of the ancient war. "They're coming," Jiwoo called from the observation post. "Multiple landing ships breaking off from the fleet. Estimate 200 ground troops." Sung-ho checked his equipment. "Defensive positions ready. Traps armed. We're as prepared as we can be." Yoonbi finished organizing the medical station. "I have teams standing by for casualties." Taemin pulled out his knife one more time. He looked at each emblem carved into the blade. 12 names, 12 friends, 12 reasons to fight. "Everyone to positions," Hajin ordered. "Remember your training. Watch each other's backs, and show these Kresh that the ghosts never died. We were just sleeping." The colonists moved to their positions. Fear was on every face, but they didn't run. They stood ready. Taemin took his place on the defensive wall. He could see the Kresh landing ships descending through the atmosphere, dark shapes against the dawn sky. The war had come to them. And there was no running anymore, only fighting, only surviving, only doing what ghosts did best. The first landing ship touched down beyond the wall. Armored Kresh warriors poured out, roaring their war cries. They charged toward the colony without hesitation, confident in their strength. They didn't know what waited for them. They had forgotten what humans could do. It was time to remind them. The Kresh came in waves. The first group hit the outer defenses with brutal force. They charged forward, confident and aggressive, expecting easy victory. They found something else. Sung-ho's traps activated. Hidden explosives detonated beneath the charging warriors. Barriers collapsed into pit traps. Mining equipment, repurposed as weapons, fired metal fragments into the Kresh ranks. The aliens stumbled and fell. Their formation broke. And in that moment of confusion, the colonists struck back. Taemin moved along the defensive wall, coordinating the defense. He had divided the colonists into small teams, each with a specific role. Some provided covering fire with mining tools converted into weapons. Others waited to push back any Kresh who reached the walls. "East side holding," Jiwoo reported over the communication system. "They're trying to flank but running into our secondary traps." "West side under pressure," Sung-ho called. "They're bringing up heavy weapons." Hajin was already moving. "I'll handle it." "Taemin, you have command." Taemin watched her go, then turned his attention back to the battle. The Kresh were regrouping. They were learning that this wouldn't be an easy fight. A Kresh warrior climbed over the wall near Taemin's position. It was massive, covered in scarred armor plating. The creature roared and swung a heavy blade at the nearest colonist. Taemin was faster. He intercepted the Kresh, his knife finding the gap in its arm armor. The warrior stumbled back, surprised by the quick attack. Taemin pressed forward, striking again and again at vulnerable points. The Kresh fell. Around him, colonists fought with desperate courage. They weren't soldiers, but they had learned well. They worked together, covering each other, using the defensive positions exactly as they had been taught. Hours passed. The sun climbed higher in the sky. The Kresh kept attacking, throwing more warriors at the colony, but each wave was smaller than the last. Each attack less coordinated. They were losing. Threnix fought beside Taemin now, holding a shock baton he had taken from a fallen Kresh. The Valari was terrified but determined. "They keep coming." "How much longer?" "Until they break," Taemin said. "Or we do." An explosion rocked the western wall. Taemin turned and saw Kresh warriors pouring through a breach. Sung-ho and his team were falling back, overwhelmed by numbers. "Jiwoo, redirect teams to the breach," Taemin ordered. "Yoonbi, prepare for wounded." But even as he spoke, he saw Hajin moving toward the breach. She ran along the top of the wall, fearless and fast. When she reached the break in the defenses, she jumped down into the middle of the Kresh warriors. What happened next was almost too fast to follow. Hajin moved like water, flowing around attacks and striking back with brutal precision. Her knife flashed in the sunlight, finding weak points in armor and vulnerable spots on bodies. The Kresh tried to surround her, but she never stayed in one place. She rolled, ducked, spun, and struck. Within moments, 5 Kresh warriors were down. The others hesitated. They had never seen anything move that fast. Never seen anything so dangerous. Sung-ho and his team used the distraction to counterattack. They pushed forward, reclaiming the breach. Between Hajin's assault and their organized defense, the Kresh were driven back. In the command center, Yoonbi was working frantically to save wounded colonists. Her medical training kept people alive who should have died, but she was also exhausted, covered in blood, pushing herself beyond normal limits. "I need more medical supplies," she called over the communication system. Storage Bay 3, Threnix responded, but it's across open ground. Too dangerous. Yunbi looked at the wounded colonists around her. Without proper supplies, they would die. I'll go. She ran out of the medical station before anyone could stop her. The open ground was being targeted by Kresh weapons. Energy blasts scorched the dirt around her feet as she ran. She almost made it. A blast hit near her leg, throwing her to the ground. She tried to get up but fell again, her leg injured. Taemin saw it happen from the wall. He didn't think. He just moved. He vaulted over the defensive barrier and ran toward Yunbi. Kresh weapons focused on him immediately. He dodged left then right, moving unpredictably. Energy blasts burned past him close enough to feel the heat. He reached Yunbi and pulled her up, supporting her weight. I've got you. The supplies, she gasped. We need them. We need you alive more. They made it back to cover together, both of them breathing hard. Seung-ho was already organizing a team to retrieve the medical supplies safely. Yunbi looked at Taemin with gratitude and respect. Thank you. We protect our own, Taemin said simply. The battle continued. But something had changed. The Kresh attacks were becoming more desperate, less organized. They were taking heavy casualties and it was affecting their morale. Then suddenly everything stopped. The Kresh warriors pulled back. They retreated to their landing ships, leaving their wounded behind. Within minutes, they were lifting off, returning to their fleet in orbit. In the colony, exhausted defenders watched in confusion. Why were the Kresh leaving? They're not leaving, Jiwoo said, checking her instruments. The fleet is repositioning. They're going to bombard us from orbit. Taemin felt his stomach drop. They had survived the ground assault, but they had no defense against orbital weapons. The Kresh could simply destroy the entire colony from space. How long? Hajin asked. Maybe 10 minutes before they're in position. Threnix's mandibles clicked in despair. Then we've lost. We can't fight warships. Taemin stared up at the sky, thinking frantically. There had to be something they could do. Some way to the communication system crackled. But this time it wasn't a Kresh voice. It was human. Haven's Rest Colony, this is Ambassador Hyunwoo of Earth. We're detecting hostile forces in your orbit. Please confirm your status. Ha-Jin grabbed the communicator. Ambassador, this is Captain Ha-Jin. Colony is secure, but under threat of orbital bombardment. Kresh fleet has 20 capital ships. We need immediate assistance. Understood, Captain. Be advised you have friendly forces inbound. ETA 2 minutes. Through the atmosphere, new ships appeared. They were sleek and fast, built for combat. Earth military vessels responding to the crisis. But they were outnumbered. 6 human ships against 20 Kresh warships. In orbit, the space battle began. The human ships moved with incredible precision. They targeted specific systems on the Kresh vessels, weapons, engines, shield generators. They didn't try to destroy the enemy ships. They disabled them. Within minutes, 3 Kresh warships were floating dead in space. 2 more were burning, their crews abandoning ship. The Kresh fleet commander made a decision. Rather than lose his entire force, he ordered a retreat. The remaining Kresh ships jumped to faster-than-light travel, fleeing the system. In the colony, everyone stood in stunned silence. Then someone started cheering. Others joined in. The celebration spread through the entire settlement. They had won. Days later, Taemin stood in the colony's rebuilt command center. Ambassador Hyunwoo had arrived to handle diplomatic matters. The ambassador was a middle-aged man with careful eyes and a diplomatic manner. The Galactic Council wants answers, Hyunwoo said. They want to know about Earth's military capabilities. They want to know why we hid our history. And what will you tell them? Ha-Jin asked. The truth, that humanity fought in the War of the Burning Suns, that we helped defeat the Kresh Dominion, and that when the war ended we chose to pursue peace instead of glory. Will they believe that? Taemin asked. Some will, others won't. But the footage from this battle has spread across the galaxy. Everyone saw what you and your team accomplished. They saw humans protecting other species, teaching civilians to defend themselves and fighting against overwhelming odds. Hyunwoo paused. You've changed the galaxy's perception of humanity, not just as traders or explorers, but as protectors. As warriors who choose when to fight? Seung-ho spoke up. What happens to us now? Do we go back to the merchant fleet? If you want to, Hyunwoo said. But I should tell you, dozens of colonies and settlements have requested human assistance. They want training, Protection. Someone to teach them how to defend themselves. You want us to be soldiers again, Yunbi said quietly. I'm asking if you'd be willing to help people who need you. The choice is yours. The 5 crew members of the Cheonsa looked at each other. They had all left military service seeking peace, but they had also all chosen to fight when people needed protecting. I'll do it, Jiwoo said, but not as a soldier, as a teacher. I'll train people to defend themselves, then move on to the next place that needs help. Same, Seung-ho agreed. I didn't want to fight wars anymore. But helping people protect their homes, that I can do. Yunbi nodded. I became a medic to save lives. Teaching others to survive does the same thing. Hajin turned to Taemin. What about you? You started all this when you cleaned your knife in that cargo bay. Taemin pulled out his blade and looked at the emblems. 12 marks. 12 names. 12 friends who had given everything during the battle. 1 colonist had died protecting others. A Volari mechanic named Renth, who had thrown himself on a grenade to save a group of children. He had been brave and scared and heroic. Taemin pulled out his engraving tool and added a 13th mark to his blade. For Renth. For the reminder that courage wasn't limited to humans or professional soldiers, I'll help, he said finally. Not because I want to fight, but because I've learned something.